Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another test-driven JavaScript video. I'm recording this on May 21st, 2013, picking up a day after the last time I recorded. In this chapter, we're working on modularization. Specifically, we're using Browserify to bundle together all of our client-side code into a single file. And eventually what we want to do is have Browserify automatically look up which files are needed to be bundled by using require functions, just like we do in our Node.js code. So if you look at our Node.js code, let's see here, you can see how we have all these require statements that tell Node.js what we're going to do. For example, here in WeWikiPaint, we're requiring our server-side code. We want to be able to do the same thing in our client-side code. In our client code, rather than just assuming that everything is attached to the WeWikiPaint global variable like SVG Canvas here, we want to require SVG Canvas. So that's what we're working on. What we have so far is in the last episode, we got this working so that the code was all built and bundled together here in this generated directory. And that code actually works. It does draw lines. Now, this code is partially built automatically and partially built sort of manually. That's what we did last time. So in this episode, we're going to pick up and finish doing that all automatically. Before we get started, just a quick note. We had this little issue in the last episode with little lines appearing when we draw, and I have not been able to reproduce that. Maybe it's a real issue. Maybe it was just some weirdness that I was having with my computer. I don't know, but I'm going to take that out for now. So we have our automated build working, and that is fantastic. It bundles together our client files, but all it does is this bundle.js. It doesn't actually bring over the vendor files or the index.html. So that's what I want to do now. Now, the question I have as I'm thinking about this is just what do we need to bring over? What we want to do is get this to the point that everything can run out of this generated build directory. We'll start using our source tree as just a raw source tree. We won't run stuff out of it directly, but we'll run stuff out of the generated directory. That's typically what I do. Well, that's what you have to do on other projects that use compiled languages. People often don't do that with JavaScript and interpreted languages, but that can get, as your project gets bigger, that gets increasingly unwieldy as you go through, you start jumping through all these hoops to prevent having to actually do a build step. But honestly, as a project gets larger and larger, you'll have more and more opportunities to do things that need a build step. So we're just going to bite the bullet here and actually run things out of the build directory rather than the source directory. That is going to lead to a problem with deployment, however, eventually, because Heroku only works off of code that's in your source tree, which I think is a major shortcoming of Heroku. I'm used to doing deployment through something like rsync, basically just copying the compiled or built files to the server and letting the server operate on those. Heroku is just the opposite. It wants to work on your source files, not your generated files. So we're going to have to figure that out, but that will come later. Let's actually put that down here. Okay. So we're going to get everything moved over to our build directory and running out of there. Right now, that's happening here in Browserify. Let's rename this to build. So build code, well, bundle and build code, for lack of a better term, to make sure that still works. Okay. Now the question is, how do we want to do this? I'd like to do it test-driven. So what I'd like to do is set up our tests so they fail until we get the code moved over to our build directory properly. And the obvious way to do that is to modify our smoke test, or to have our smoke test fail, because our smoke test is really the end-to-end test. So what happens if we change WeWikiPaint? Here we go. Okay. So our content directory is currently set up to be source/client. What happens if we change that to be generated/build build/client. That should fail. It'll pass everything except for the smoke test. Perfect. Good. It's not a great failure message, but it did fail like it was supposed to. If we put that back, it passes. Put it here. It fails. Okay, good. I note, however, that we've got a duplication between WeWikiPaint.js content.dir and our Jake file. So we'll want to look at that. Okay, now if I make a new directory here, a client directory, and I move everything in there, there we go. I move everything in there. Now our smoke test should pass. But it isn't for some reason. Why not? Generated/build/client. What if we do it this way? No. All right, we've got a problem here, partially that this error message is really bad. I'm going to take a moment and see if I can figure that out. Back in a few. Okay, I'm back. I ran it manually using Foreman and loaded the page. And you can see here we got an error no entity missing the 404 file. So that's good. I'm going to make a note that we need to improve failure messages in smoke test. And actually, I think we should do that fairly soon. But let's see if we can get this fixed. Should just be a matter of moving this HTML file over. Yeah, there we go. So we're just missing our HTML file. Okay, good. So, and also we need the bundle to go now into build/client. So let's go ahead and change that. Let's put it in build/client.dir, which means we'll need a build/client.dir. And this will depend on our build/client.dir. Okay, so if we run all that, that should work. And if I delete this bundle, it should stop reappearing. Great, great. Okay, now what? Let's go ahead and take a moment to see if we can fix our smoke tests so they give a better error message. And so to simulate that, I'm going to take out this 404 file again. So we should now see that. Oops, that was the wrong one. Let's put that back. Let's take this one out. Yeah, that failed. I want to see a better error message here. And I think the issue is that we're just not handling, hoping that we're just not handling any errors. Let's try that. No. Okay, I'm going to experiment with this a little bit offline since I don't think it's the main point of what we're trying to do in this chapter. Back in a few. Okay, I'm back. This was a pretty straightforward change. I just had to modify our server spawn code right here so that it would pipe through the standard in and standard out to our code, but just pass standard error straight through to our our own standard error. So now if I run this, you get the same error message, but now we can see the error that's given to us by the by WeWikiPaint itself. So that's a nice improvement. I'm going to go ahead and add just that change real quick. Okay, and fixing this error should be pretty straightforward. It's because we don't have the 404 file, and we can fix that just by copying this through to here. Excellent. Okay, that's great. So go ahead and check this in as well. There we go. So we're looking at our build directory for the client files. Now, that's fine as far as it goes, but it's not really good enough, because if we clean this, a lot of that was done manually. If we clean it and thus erase our generated code, it will recreate some of it, but it won't create enough of it. What we're going to see here is that it's going to say can't find the 404. That's probably not all it can't find. That just happened to be the first thing it ran across. There's no HTML files in there. There's nothing. So we need to now modify our Jake file so that it builds everything. So here's the browserify part, but we also need to, well, let's start out by just always deleting the builder. Everything in the builder. So that way, as we make changes, we don't want it to end up using old code. So if we put the 404 file in there and then we run Jake, we should see that 404 file disappear. But it didn't. Okay, why not? I see it saying rmrf generated build /star, but I don't see it actually deleting the file. But if we do it manually, it does work. Is that a bug in Jake? I hope not. So there it's creating our bundle. And if I copy this 404 in here, rmrf generated build star, it's not deleting it. Huh. Well, that's frustrating. Let's come back to that. It's really important in your automated build to do this sort of cleanup, though, because otherwise you can get some just really annoying errors. But we'll come back to that. What I'd like to do is just get our vendor and HTML files in there real quick. Let's see if I can do this in the time we have remaining. I think what we want is copy everything. So let's say we'll take everything from source client star.html and put it in our build client dir. Will that work? Didn't seem to find it. Didn't find source client star.html. It probably, oh, I bet you that's the issue with both of these. It's not doing the glob expansion. So we're going to have to do that manually. Yeesh, what a pain. Well, that is all the time we have for this episode. So next time we're going to pick up, we're going to continue to try to get our Jake file automatically moving our source code into this generated directory so that we can run everything out of our generated build directory. What we need to do next is we need to figure out how to copy a bunch of files over in our build, and we need to delete this as well. We've improved the failure messages, and we're working on building all the code Well, we need to figure out how to do the vendor files. And we're working on the rest of this. All right. So that's it for this time. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. I will catch you next time.